You know, one of the stories that doesn't get nearly enough coverage in the US is just how much of a scam and a ripoff our pharma industry is. So, one of the stories that stuck with me ever since we read it was there's a cancer drug. It's for a specific kind of cancer that it sells for about $200 in the UK. You know what it costs here in the US? About $38,000. So, this is, it's criminal, right? Especially when you learn that for the past 2 decades, every single medicine that has been developed with taxpayer money at universities usually. So, in other words, taxpayers pay for the research and development, a drug is created to help people, then Big Pharma swoops in there, buys up the rights, the intellectual property rights, and then sells it back to us at a massive profit. And they price gouge us at the same time. And so, look, I'm not the brightest dude in the world, but that appears to me like we just have a giant mafia ripping us off for life-saving medication. That's what it is. And so, this is one area where the answer is very straightforward. Nationalization. There shouldn't be for-profit big pharma entities. It should be totally nationalized. And that would fix the problem literally overnight. You just have to get rid of these parasites. Like, how much do these CEOs make? Some of these CEOs make tens of millions of dollars every single year. For what? For what? For jacking up the price of something that was made with taxpayer money. Anyway, look, I digress. There's a new article that just came out from the New York Times. And this details the problem. How a drug company made $114 billion by gaming the U.S. patent system. AbbVie, for years, delayed competition for its blockbuster drug, Humira, however you say it, at the expense of patients and taxpayers. The monopoly is about to end. So let me give you some of this here. They say, in 2016, a blockbuster drug called Humira was poised to become a lot less valuable. The key patent on the best-selling anti-inflammatory medication used to treat conditions like arthritis was expiring at the end of the year. Regulators had blessed a rival version of the drug, and more copycats were close behind. The onset of competition seemed likely to push down the medication's $50,000 a year list price. Instead, the opposite happened. Through its savvy but legal exploitation of the U.S. patent system, Humira's manufacturer, AbbVie, blocked competitors from entering the market. For the next 6 years, the drug's price kept rising. Today, Humira is the most lucrative franchise in pharmaceutical history. Next week, the curtain is expected to come down on a monopoly that has generated $114 billion in revenue for AbbVie just since the end of 2016. The knockoff drug that regulators authorized more than 6 years ago, Amgen's Amjevita, will come to market in the United States, and as many as 9 more Humira competitors will follow this year from pharmaceutical giants including Pfizer. Prices are likely to tumble. The reason that it has taken so long to get to this point is a case study in how drug companies artificially prop up prices for their best-selling drugs. AbbVie orchestrated the delay by building a formidable wall of intellectual property protection and suing would-be competitors before settling with them to delay their product launches until this year. The strategy has been a goldmine for AbbVie at the expense of patients and taxpayers. So let me explain a little bit about what they did here. So what they do, the way like a generic works or a biosimilar works, a generic drug is, so you take the original version of the drug, you tweak something about the drug that's like irrelevant and doesn't really change what the drug does. Like you tweak the chemical makeup just a little bit, but in a way that doesn't ruin the efficacy of the drug. And so since it's not exactly the same, then you go, hey, it's a different drug, even though it's similar and it fixes the same problems. And now we're going to sell that and we're going to, undercut the competitor and sell it for much cheaper. And then, that's how you get competition, you get better prices, and people get the treatment that they need, right? So that's how a generic would work in theory. So what they did in this instance, what AbbVie did with Humira in this instance is they would get ahead of their competitors, they would tweak the formula themselves, then they would patent that too. And then they'd say, look, if you sell this, we're going to sue you and we're going to win, because they were exploiting the intellectual patent laws. And so eventually what ended up happening is the other drug companies were like, hey, you can't really do this. This isn't fair. You're cheating. But AbbVie responded and said, well, what if I cut you in on our colossal profits? What if I give you a percentage of our colossal profits? So in other words, let us exploit this loophole. Let us destroy the people who need the medicine, watch as they go bankrupt, but we'll give you a percentage of our profits, and then you need to put off selling your generic drug until 2023. And remember, I believe this drug was created in 2002. I think they go on to say that in the article. So now we're talking, over 20 years of this. And this article is explaining how, look, this just is coming to an end now. But who knows? They probably have other tricks up their sleeve, right? But this has already gone on for way too long. I mean, look, when you look at this, it's hard to agree with intellectual property laws as they exist up front anyway. Because it's like, if you have this thing that works, and the people who are selling it are charging 80 grand and people can't afford it, then this system is just broken. The system's not fair. The system's not just. The system is going to leave people behind to die or suffer simply so this company can make a profit. I mean, it's psycho stuff. It's psycho stuff. And look, keep it real. This is how capitalism works. Because all they care about, first and foremost, is the profit. That's all they care about. Everything else is ancillary. So anyway, that's the gist of what goes on in this article. Let me go. I want to scroll down. I want to get to, and they go on to give some more numbers here about the price of the drug went up 60% to $80,000 a year. They're just arbitrarily jacking it up and doing whatever the hell they can get away with. I want to give you the individuals who were impacted by this so you know the human toll. Okay? So that's deeper in the article. Some Medicare patients have been suffering as a result. Sue Lee, 80, of Crestwood, Kentucky, has been taking Humira for years to prevent painful sores caused by a chronic skin condition known as psoriasis. Her employer's insurance plan had helped keep her annual payments to $60. Then she retired. Under Medicare rules, she would have to pay about $8,000 a year, which she could not afford. Quote, "I cried a long time," she said. For months, Miss Lee stopped taking any medication. The sores came back with a vengeance, she said. She joined a clinical trial to temporarily get access to another medication. Now she is relying on free samples of another drug provided by her doctor. She doesn't know what she'll do if that supply runs out. Barb Terran, a book buyer in Brook Park, Ohio, plans to delay her retirement because she is worried about Humira's cost. Ms. Terran, who takes Humira for Crohn's disease and colitis, has never had to pay more than $5 for a refill of the drug because her employer's insurance plan picks up most of the tab. The cost, according to a pharmacy app on Ms. Terran's phone, was $88,766 in the past year. Ms. Terran, who turned 64 in March, would have liked to retire next year, but that would have meant relying on Medicare. She fears that her out-of-pocket costs will spiral higher. Quote, "When I look at the $88,000 charge for a year, there's no way," Ms. Terran said. AbbVie executives have acknowledged that Medicare patients often pay much more than privately insured people, but they said the blame lay with Medicare. In 2021 testimony to a congressional committee investigating drug prices, AbbVie's chief executive, Richard Gonzalez, said the average Medicare patient had to pay $5,800 out of pocket annually. AbbVie declined to provide updated figures. He said AbbVie provided the drug for virtually nothing to nearly 40% of Medicare's patients. The drug's high price is also taxing employers. Soon after she started taking Humira, Melissa Anderson, an occupational therapist from Camdenton, is that Montana or Missouri? I think Montana. No, Missouri, whatever. Got a call from a human resources representative at her company. The company directly covers its employees' health claims rather than paying premiums to an insurer. The Humira cost was costing the company well over $70,000 a year, more than Ms. Anderson's salary. The HR employee asked if Ms. Anderson would be willing to obtain the drug in an unconventional way to save money. She said yes. As soon as March, her company plans to fly Ms. Anderson, 48 years old, to the Bahamas so a doctor can prescribe her a 4-month supply of Humira that she can pick up at a pharmacy there. Humira is much cheaper in the Bahamas, where the industry has less influence than it does in Washington, and the government proactively controls drug pricing. So that's like the little cherry on top at the end here, is that other countries don't deal with this. Other countries tell the drug companies, like, yeah, this is what you're going to charge. This is what it's going to be. Okay? That's it. Because this is too important to just leave up to you guys, because clearly you're going to price gouge everybody in sight and screw them over. And so now this poor lady had to go to the Bahamas in order to get it done. So the impact of pharmaceutical money in Washington, D.C. is protecting this system that I just described to you about how everything's a scam. They're a giant mafia, Big Pharma is, and they're ripping everybody off. You have to nationalize Big Pharma. And they go on here to give more stories of, people getting obliterated as a result of this crazy system. So there you have it. Now, look, in a world that made sense, everybody would be talking about this story. This would be big breaking news on the screen over at CNN and Fox News and MSNBC and the nightly news. But no, it's just going to be this one wonky article in the New York Times, and nobody else is going to talk about it. I'm the only one who's going to talk about this. This is way, way more important than whenever culture war nonsense people are melting down over today. Is the right angry about Dr. Seuss today? Are they angry that Xbox has a power saver mode? Like, that's going to be the national discourse, the national dialogue, when everybody agrees on this right here. Everybody agrees these people are scammers. Everybody agrees this is fraudulent. Everybody agrees this is price gouging. Everybody agrees this shouldn't be allowed. Now, remember, we would have had a law in this country saying we get to lower drug prices for every drug, for everybody across the board, if it wasn't for two people, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, who took about $1 million from Big Pharma during the Build Back Better negotiations. And so instead of getting what we all know is the right answer, lower prescription drug prices for every drug for everybody, what we ended up getting was some lower prescription drug prices only for senior citizens. And that's the real scandal. That's the real scandal. The real scandal is how corrupt and broken our government is, and how everything is meant to distract you from pointing your finger in the right direction, from putting the blame where it belongs. And where it belongs is the lobbyists, the special interests, the corporations, the billionaires, the big pharma industry, and the politicians who are willingly being bought by them and preventing all change. Everybody should know this story about how broken the system is. And we need to change it ASAP. Nationalize Big Pharma and nationalize it now. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.